third viewpoint, third perspective, the third perspective emphasized on the human being's ability, human beings' potential, human beings' free will, and their responsibilities for their behavior. So, it treats human beings as humans. So, it is known as the third force in psychology. The third force of psychology is known as the humanistic viewpoint of personality. Okay, so humanists or humanistic psychologists, they view human beings in positive manner. So they include concepts like personal growth, openness to experience, personal responsibility, and they think that human beings are inherently good people. Okay, all of us are inherently good. So, this is in short humanistic perspective. There are two significant personality theorists who come under humanistic viewpoint or perspective. The first is Abraham Maslow. You must have heard his name, Abraham Maslow. Maslow focus upon potentials. They believe that humans strive for an upper level of capabilities. So humans seek the frontiers of creativity, the highest reaches of consciousness and wisdom. They have the potentiality and they have the tendency to become what Maslow labeled a fully functioning person. So Maslow calls this as a self-actualization. Actually, Maslow lists some needs which are hierarchically arranged. So this is known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These needs are arranged hierarchically in the shape of a pyramid. At the lowest level of the pyramid, there are physiological needs. Physiological needs which are basic or which are essential to be satisfied, which are required to be satisfied for if the animal is to survive. So they are essential for our survival. So at the lowest level of the pyramid are the physiological needs like our hunger, thirst, or sex, etc. Okay. Um, they tend to be satisfied, but they become predominant when unmet. If satisfied, we do not think of these needs. We take them for granted. But if they are not satisfied, they become predominant. Okay. So above the physiological needs like hunger, thirst, etc., come the safety needs. Safety needs such as health and security. Once our hunger, thirst, or biological needs are satisfied, these safety needs come to forefront. Okay. Above the safety needs are the belongingness needs. It is our need to be loved. So, need for obtaining love or need to be in intimate relationship, close friendship. We need to be accepted by others or loved by others. So, this is belongingness needs. The next level above the belongingness needs are the esteem needs. Esteem needs include the need for recognition from others, achievement, self-esteem, etc., prestige, etc. And above the esteem needs are the highest level of needs, which is self-actualization needs. Self-actualization needs are self-fulfillment needs. So self-actualization means to become what we can be, to become all what we can be. That is self-actualization, to fulfill all our potentials. And according to Maslow, all of us have a tendency to self-actualize, have a self-actualization needs. Um, Once our lower levels are satisfied, we the higher level needs, they come to forefront and they drive the individual to achieve them, to satisfy them. Okay. So Maslow believed that the survival needs, or the needs which are vital for our survival, such as the need for water, air, food, sleep, etc., biological needs. Uh, these needs are the most basic and instinctive needs in the hierarchy, and they need to be satisfied first. If suppose we are operating at a higher level of need, suppose now we are operating at, I think, esteem need, or we want to become what we become, anything, we are not operating at the physiological level. Okay, we are not concerned about hunger, we are operating at a higher level of need. But if our physiological needs are not satisfied, suppose I am working in my organization, okay, I am getting salary, and all my lower level of needs are being satisfied. Oh, and I am working for working here because I am getting prestige, or I am getting satisfaction, and I am trying to fulfill my hobby, anything it may be. But suppose my employer stops my giving my salary, okay, he doesn't give my salary, I don't get any salary, what will I do? I may not be teaching here for my satisfaction of or for my fulfillment of my potential. I may try to release my salary, so my physiological needs will be then more prominent, so I may come back to lower level if situations arise. Okay, so the individual moves up and down during his lifetime. So these are the 5 needs originally suggested by Maslow. But later on, Maslow included 2 other needs above the esteem need and below the actualization needs. That means he included 2 more needs in between the esteem and actualization need. They are cognitive needs and aesthetic needs. Cognitive needs are related to our academic life. cognitive, if our cognitive needs is high or is prominent, we try to learn or to try to gather knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Just usually, what do? We are studying to get a job or to get good marks in the exam. So we don't study outside our course materials. We think what is why it is necessary to study so many things. They will not come in examination. So we are studying to get good marks so that we can get a job. But cognitive need suggests that or cognitive needs drive the individual to learn, to gather knowledge for the sake of knowledge. By knowing, the individual gets pleasure. Okay. And the other above the cognitive need, Maslow talks of aesthetic need. It is a need for order and beauty. It is typical of artistic people. Okay. So in later modifications of his theory, Maslow included these cognitive needs and aesthetic needs, and he placed them in between the esteem need and self-actualization need. Not only these two needs, he also added another need above the self-actualization need. It is self-transcendence need. Self-transcendence needs means once we are self-actualized, if our self-transcendence need is active, then we help others to self-actualize. We help others to become self-actualized persons. We help others to fulfill their potentials. Okay, that is self-transcendence need. And according to Maslow, the person.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Hello. Am I? Hello.
Yes. What are you saying? Are you asking something?
So, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Ask. What are you asking?
So, ma'am, in cognitive needs and aesthetic needs, above the esteem needs, which one comes first?
Cognitive
Either
need.
the cognitive need or aesthetic need.
It is above the esteem need comes the cognitive need.
Okay, ma'am.
Then comes esteem need. Esteem need is just below the self-actualization need. And once, according to Maslow, once the
Ma'am,
person,
is esteem need or aesthetic need?
your physiological needs are at the bottom most level.
Yes,
Then
ma'am.
comes safety.
Yes, ma'am.
Then comes belongingness. Then comes esteem.
Yes, ma'am.
Then comes cognitive needs. Then comes aesthetic needs. AESTHETIC, aesthetic needs. Then comes self-actualization need. Then comes self-transcendence need. Okay. Okay. Are you clear?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Got you. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So, according to Maslow, moving up and down and then back up can occur frequently in life. Times in a person's life in which self-actualization is achieved, at least temporarily, are called peak experiences. When the self-actualization is achieved, Maslow says that the individual is a fully functioning individual. But as I told you, we move up and down. So self-actualization needs may be satisfied temporarily. After achieving self-actualization, we may again come back to lower level of needs. So when the self-actualization needs are achieved temporarily, Maslow tells this as a peak experience. So peak experiences are times in a person's life during which self-actualization is achieved temporarily. Okay. Then Maslow categorizes these needs into deficiency needs and growth needs. Okay. Deficiency needs include the first 4 levels of needs. Okay. So the first 4 levels of needs, that is the physiological needs, safety needs, belongingness needs, and esteem needs, they are called deficit needs or D needs. D for deficiency. If we do not have enough of something of these needs, then it is said that we have a deficit. That is, we feel the need. If they are not satisfied, we feel the need. But if we get all we need, we feel nothing at all. Okay. Or in other words, they cease to be motivating. Once our hunger is satisfied, then we are not motivated by food. Okay. We don't want to have more food. So these are deficit needs. Maslow explains these needs work as homeostasis, the work operation of these needs in terms of homeostasis. You know homeostasis? Homeostasis is the principle by which the bodily system or bodily processes operate. Suppose when it gets too cold, homeostasis is like a thermostat in the fridge. If the temperature of the inside the refrigerator is too low or it is too cold, then the thermostat switches the heat on. So the temperature rises. And when the optimum level of heat is reached, then again the heat switch gets switch automatically becomes off. In the same way, human body, when it lacks a certain substance, then develops a hunger for it. When it gets enough of it, then the hunger stops. If we are thirsty, then we have a desire for water. Okay. When our thirst is quenched, then our desire is no more there. Okay. So it works like a homeostatic mechanism. It works on homeostatic principle. So all these deficiency needs, if they are satisfied, we do not want them more. But if they are not satisfied, we look for them. And the higher level of needs above the esteem needs are called growth needs. They are governed by our growth motivation. So the higher last level of needs are called growth needs. They are called the being needs or B needs. Okay, B for boy, B needs. Self-actualization is a B need. Our cognitive need, aesthetic need are B needs. These B needs or being needs or growth needs, as you may call it, these needs do not involve balance or homeostasis. They involve continuous desire to fulfill potentials, to be all that you can be. Okay? If you want to be truly self-actualizing, you need to have your lower needs taken care of, at least to a considerable extent. But for B needs, there is a continuous desire to fulfill. Okay? So B needs are called as growth needs. The question becomes what exactly Maslow means by self-actualization. To answer that, Maslow looked at the kind of people he considered self-actualized persons. Who are the self-actualized persons? According to Maslow, Maslow lists some person names whom he thinks that they are self-actualized, and he did a qualitative analysis of their biographies. Those people whom those self-actualized people. So he picked up historical figures like your Abraham Lincoln, Albert Einstein, Roosevelt, etc. Then he named some other people also, whom he thought to be self-actualized. He studied their biographies and he argues that these people are self-actualized. Okay, so Maslow also suggests some characteristics of self-actualized people. Self-actualized people are reality-centered, problem-centered. Actually, they emphasize on the means rather than ends, and they enjoyed autonomy. They are independent of physical and social, physiological and social needs. They have an unhostile sense of humor. They accept themselves as well as others, and they are spontaneous, simple, humble, etc. Creative, inventive, original, and they tend to have more peak experiences than an average person. Peak experience, I told you, temporary feeling of self-actualization. Okay. However, self-actualized people, according to Maslow, are not perfect people. They have also some negative characteristics. So, coming to evaluation of Maslow's theory, we may say that Maslow gives a positive picture of human being, and his unique contribution lies in his preoccupation with healthy people rather than sick people. Psychodynamic perspective focus on mentally ill people. So they have more contributions to the field of abnormal psychology. But Maslow talks of healthy people. Okay. But Maslow's theory has also been criticized on the ground of his methodology. What did he do? He based his theory on the basis of the biography of some people whom he thought self-actualized. Okay. So, Nikki, are you saying something?
Ma'am, what is dynamic homeostasis?
Dynamic homeostasis.
Ma'am, we
What are
discussed about homeostasis.
homeostasis?
Yes, ma'am.
Homeostasis is a mechanism which maintains a balance, which maintains an optimum condition within the body. Okay,
Yes.
whenever we have some deficiency or we lack something, our body tries automatically to make up it. Suppose we are hungry, body requires food. You must you must have experienced. Sometimes we have a craving for some type of foods. Okay, suppose we have a deficiency for a certain kind of vitamin. It's a vitamin B. Okay, so we have a vitamin B deficiency. If we have a strong vitamin B deficiency, then our body craves for food which are rich in vitamin B, so that we take vitamin B and the balance is maintained.
Ma'am,
We get,
for the homeostasis has been divided into two parts, like static homeostasis and dynamic homeostasis. Like, can you share or are you aware of it?
no, sorry, I cannot say. Dynamic homeostasis, I think it motivates you there or to do something to achieve the balance.
Okay.
To achieve the body balance. I think so. But sorry,
No, ma'am. These contributions were by Court level, so I think I can. I was a bit doubtful about it.
okay, I will look into it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. At present I cannot say that. Sorry.
No, ma'am, it's okay.
Okay. So Maslow's theory has also been criticized on the grounds of methodology, and Maslow limits self-actualization to be achieved only by 2% of the human species. So most of us, according to Maslow, cannot achieve or do not achieve this. When we would discuss another humanistic theorist, that is Carl Roger. Mm, Carl Roger's theory is also very popular. Carl Rogers rejected the behaviorists' argument that The behaviorists emphasize on observation of objective observation of behavior. Okay, but Rogers rejected the idea that the individual's behavior has to be observed by somebody else. Okay, in order to understand the behavior of a person, some external agent or external person should observe it. He rejected that idea. He thinks that by suggesting objective observation of behavior, we assume that the person himself do not understand himself. So we need to observe him. But since humanists, they believe in the ability, potentiality of human beings. He argues that the human being understands himself and no one else can understand him better than he understands himself. Okay, so for the individual, the truth is what he experiences. Okay, so Rogers argues that the subjective experiences of the individual is important. If we want to understand a person or we want to study a person's behavior, we need to understand his subjective experiences. So he terms it the phenomenological world of the subject. So phenomenological world of the person. Phenomenology means study of experiences. So he emphasized on studying the phenomenological world of the person, inner life of the person.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes. Yes. Are you saying
Ma'am, you are
something?
not audible.
I am not audible. Hello?
Sorry,
Hello?
ma'am. Hello.
No,
Hello?
ma'am, you are absolutely audible. I guess, Sumitra, you have some network errors.
Hello.
Hello?
Ma'am, you are not audible. Hello.
But the other people are the other people can hear me.
Hello,
I am
ma'am.
other people. I think you have some network problem.
No.
Now, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello? Now you can hear me?
Hello.
Hello?
No,
Am
ma'am.
I audible to you? Hello? 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 Am I audible to you now?
Madam, you are audible.
Hello,
Maybe
ma'am.
Sumitra has some network problem.
Okay. So, according to Rogers, we should start from the phenomenological world or the inner life of the organism. According to Rogers, the organism or the person is rational, he is trustworthy, he is inherently good, and all of us have a tendency to self-actualize. Okay. So, what is self-actualize? according to Rogers, Rogers theory is also known as a self theory. Rogers talks of two types of self, the real self and the ideal self. The real self is what the person thinks he is. Okay. So real self is the self concept of the person. From where the self concept comes? As the child grows, he begins to differentiate between I and me from the rest of the world. So he tries to differentiate, and gradually he forms an understanding of himself, or he forms a concept of himself or herself. His understanding depends on the other important people in his life. So, self-concept is an individual's set of beliefs, knowledge, and feelings about himself. It is the image of oneself that develops from interactions with significant people in his or her life. Okay? Self-concept focuses on the part of the self that are accessible to consciousness. Rogers rejected the idea that we should study the unconscious part of the personality, because according to Rogers, unconscious part can never be studied. So we should not bother about it. We should focus our study on only the conscious part of the personality, conscious part of the self-concept. So self-concept develops from our interaction with the others in our life. Rogers talks of two types of self, the real self and the ideal self. The real self is one's perception of his actual characteristics, traits, and abilities, what he thinks he is. Okay? So, his perception of himself is his real self. And what is ideal self? Ideal self is what the person thinks he should be, or what he likes to be. So ideal self is what he likes to be, or what he likes to achieve, what he should be, or what he would like to be. That is his ideal self. The ideal self also primarily comes from important, significant persons in one's life, most often the parents. Okay. Rogers believed that when the real self and the ideal self are very close or similar to each other, people feel competent and capable. Okay. When this real self and ideal self, they overlap, there is a overlapping of real self and ideal self, people feel confident, competent, and they can achieve self-actualization. In fact, if the gap between the real self and the ideal self is large, there is a huge gap between the real self and the ideal self, then the person suffers from anxiety and neurotic behavior. So happy people have a much smaller discrepancy between the real self and the ideal self. So Rogers suggested a method to know the real self and the ideal self of the person. This method is known as Q-SORT method. Q, English letter. Q-SORT, S-O-R-T, Q-SORT method. In this method, what he does, he piles up several cards on.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes? Yes? Are you saying something?
Can you please repeat that method?
Q-SORT method. Q-SORT method. Q means English letter Q. So Q-SORT method involves the person to organize some cards. There are a pile of cards on which on each card a statement is written, like I am friendly, I am anxious, I help people, like this. I am tensed most of the time, and the person is asked to arrange these cards. First, he is asked to select the card which is most descriptive of his nature or of his personality. The card which is the most appropriately describes his behavior. Then the next appropriate card is arranged. Like this, the cards are arranged. And like this, another pile of cards which contains statements like I would like to be friendly, I would like to be creative, or I would like to be good in mathematics, or I should be a good writer, etc. And likewise, the person is asked to arrange that pile of cards also. After the person arranges the two piles of cards, the psychologist, he finds out the correlation between the two piles of cards and tries to find out the gap between the two piles of cards. That's how we can know the discrepancy between his real self and the ideal self. That is Q-SORT method. Rogers believe that if we get unconditional positive regard, then the gap between real self and ideal self can be decreased. Okay. What is unconditional positive regard? What happens most of the time? Our parents
Ma'am, can I
impose.
say something?
Yes. Yes.
Ma'am, I think unconditional positive regard is a therapeutic situation in which the client is treated well.
Yes. You are right. This is also used in therapeutic situations, but the therapeutic method is based on his idea, his theory of personality. Okay,
Okay,
you
ma'am.
are right. Unconditional positive regard is used in therapeutic situations also. But you see, what happens in our families? Often parents say the child, I will love you if you become fast in your, you stand fast in your class. Or I want you to be a doctor. If you are a doctor, what the child understand? If I am unable to become a doctor, then my parents will be unhappy. They will not love me. Okay, so the parents most of the time impose conditions on the conditions about the behavior of the children, um, so that they for loving them, for accepting them. If you do this, I will love you, or I will give you something, or I will accept you, etc. So conditions are imposed upon the child. Suppose from these conditions the child develops his or her ideal self. I should be a doctor. I should stand fast in my class. I should be good in mathematics, etc. So I should not argue with my elders. Such type of shoulds constitute the ideal self of the child. But his real potentialities may be something different. Suppose I want to be or I want to study literature, but my parents are um, pressing me to study medicine. So the parents want that I should be a doctor, but I myself like to study literature, and I know that I am good in literature. So what will happen? There will be a gap between our between my real self and the ideal self. So if parents do not impose any conditions, they accept the child as he or she is, then the child can become what he wants. The child will go to satisfy his interests, to fulfill his potentials. So the gap between real self and ideal self will be less, isn't it? So the, but this doesn't mean that the child will approve all the parents will approve all the child's deeds. Suppose the child does some mistakes, the duty of the parents is, according to Rogers, is to explain the child, is to convey the child that we love you, but we do not approve of your behavior, but we love you. Whatever you do, we love you, we accept you as our child, but we do not approve your behavior. So you change your behavior, but we still love you. So there is a difference between me and my behavior. Okay. And Rogers emphasized that there should there is to be a, there should be a matching between what I think of myself or my self concept and my actual behavior. So my self concept and my actual behavior should not be different from each other. Rogers terms or uses the word congruity for this. Congruity means matching between my self-concept and my behavior. If my behavior is according to my self-concept, then I am congruous, and if my behavior contradicts my self-concept, I am incongruous. When my behavior doesn't match my self-concept, then it is likely that I will feel uncomfortable. A state of incongruence is always uncomfortable. So, what I will do, I will try to achieve congruence, because incongruence or incongruence is uncomfortable. Suppose I am incongruent. My behavior is incongruent with my self-concept. So I am uncomfortable. I will try to achieve congruence. Then what I will do, Rogers says that I will change my perception. I will resort to use of defense mechanism. I will respond defensively, because my behavior is not doesn't go along with my self concept. So I respond defensively. So Rogers talks of two types of defense mechanisms. First is denial, and the second is distortion. Denial is refusing to accept at the conscious level that the experience happened, that actually I behaved in such a manner. Okay, so denial is refusing the actual experience. Actually, I behave in a contradictory manner. I am refusing to accept. That is denial. And distortion occurs more often than denial. It involves misremembering the experience or distorting the experience to make it consistent with our self-concept, okay, or perceived self. So we distort the reality, or we misremember the reality in order to make it consistent with our self-concept. Suppose I think myself as a very gentle person, okay, but I behave aggressively with you, okay. So my behavior, my aggression is contradictory to my self-concept. I think myself to be very gentle, very polite, okay. So if I deny it, I deny that no, I actually didn't behave aggressively. Actually, I didn't behave aggressively. See, my tone may be, my voice may be loud, might be loud. My voice might have been loud, but I didn't actually behave aggressively. But that is denial. And distortion means I distort the reality or misremember the reality. So I think I shouted at the person. Perhaps the person told me something. That's why I shouted at him. So it is the person who is responsible for my anger. So I am here distorting the reality or misremembering the reality. So we all want to achieve congruence. Then self-actualization, according to Rogers, is the motive that impels human beings to actions. We all have a tendency to self-actualize. We have an actualizing tendency which aims to develop all capacities in ways that maintain or enhance the organism to move it toward autonomy, or the tendency to be constructive, to be all what I can be, to be a self-fulfilling person. So self-actualization, when the gap between the ideal self and the real self is not there, the person becomes self-actualized. So development of self, to explain how does the self develops, I have already asked you. With our interaction with the significant people in our life, our self, both real self and ideal self emerge. So Rogers doesn't suggest a stage theory of personality development like Freud or Erikson or Sullivan. So for the development of self, Rogers recognize three important points. First, the child should feel that he is recognized, he is accepted. Second, the parents should not threat.
Ma'am, can you repeat this, please?
Okay, first, the child should feel accepted, should feel recognized. Okay, the parents should not threaten the child that they will not love him. So this child should not have a fear of loss of love. Okay, parents should not threaten punishment of loss of love. Okay. Third, the hostile or unacceptable behavior of the child must be clearly and unmistakably rejected and prevented. The parents should clearly explain that this behavior is unacceptable, but you are accepted. Okay? That is crucial. You are accepted. We will always love you. We will always accept you. But your behavior is unacceptable and it is to be changed. We reject your behavior. Okay? So, for the development of...
Ma'am, what was the
Yes.
second one?
Second one, they should not threaten the child with the punishment of loss of love. If you do something, do this, I will not love you. Sometimes mothers say to their children, if you do this, I will not be your mother. I will bring some other child. I will adopt some other child. I will not be your mother. You must have experienced in your families also. We threaten the child. If you do such things, or if you do this, I will do this. I will go away. I will leave you. Have you not heard such type of comments on the parts of the parents? I think it is.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Parents say, I will be very happy with you if you are a doctor. So they are imposing conditions. If you do this, then only I will love you. If you don't do this, I will not love you. So the parents should not do it. Okay. But this doesn't mean that we will accept the child's, the parents should accept the child's unacceptable behavior. Okay. So how to evaluate Rogers? Rogers has a positive view of human nature. His theory of personality has wide applicability in counseling and psychotherapy. So Rogers suggested his therapeutic methods, which first it was known as non-directive therapy. Then the therapy was known as client-centered therapy. Now it is known as person-centered approach. Okay, so Rogers' person-centered approach is very popular, and its effectiveness it is also has also been reported. So studies also report the effectiveness of person-centered therapy. You actually, you are correct. You were saying that unconditional positive regard is used in person-centered therapy. So person-centered therapy is is based on three things: unconditional positive regard, empathy, and genuineness. These are the characteristics of the therapist or counselor, on which the success of the therapy depends. However, Rogers has also been criticized. Why? Rogers has it is criticized that Rogers' theory is a philosophical view. It is more a philosophical view than a formal, concrete psychological theory. It is very difficult. Critics say that it is very difficult to test it scientifically. Rogers advocate the importance of the study of phenomenology. Okay, how can we know the subjective experience of a person? How can we know? From the subject's own report, isn't it? So we are accepting here the whatever the subject is accepting is true, but this may not be the case. The subject may be reporting something else. As we know, in interviews and questionnaires, there is chance of taking the response. So we are accepting the subject's report as true. Whatever the subject is saying is true, but the subject in actuality might be faking. And psychoanalysts and also recent psychologists, they recognize the role of unconscious mind. But Rogers rejected. Rogers said that we should not study the unconscious mind. We should study the only the conscious mind. And behaviorists say that self-actualization is a very it is defined it is not defined clearly, since we cannot operationalize self actualization. According to Rogers, it is difficult to study it experimentally, to test it experimentally. From what behavior we will say that the person is self-actualized? It is not very clearly defined in Rogers' theory. And some critics believe that Rogers gives a very rosy picture of personality. Very rosy. Roger is very much optimistic. Because Rogers believe that human beings are inherently good. They have a tendency to grow. They have the ability to take personal responsibility for their behavior. They have the capacity to self-actualize. So, by holding such a positive view of human beings, Rogers actually is not always correct, because there are some people like the psychopaths who are not inherently good. They are bad people. Terrorists, they are not doing anything good. So we cannot say psychopaths, we cannot change them. Psychopaths are inherently bad. So Rogers' idea of inherent goodness of human beings is not always true. So Rogers is a very rosy, Rogers gives a very rosy picture of human nature, rosy theory. Okay, so this is what Rogers theory, and we have also discussed Maslow's theory. Have you any doubt? Have you any doubt?
No, ma'am, we don't have.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so let us discuss personality assessment. Why should we try to assess personality? By studying personality, we are saying that each person is unique. Okay, so we are assuming that people are different from each other, people are distinct from each other in terms of their traits, motives, values, temperaments, etc., interests, etc. So they are different from each other. If they are different, their individual differences need to be measured. because it is required for counseling, for the personality assessment is required for in therapeutic situations, in counseling situations, in your organizational settings, when the employer is going to employ you, then he may be interested in knowing what type of personality you have, whether you will be fitting to the organization or not. So personality assessment is necessary. There are several methods of personality assessment. We will discuss it, but going before going to the methods of personality assessment, we actually need to know some of the qualities of good some qualities of personality tests. Okay, personality measurement instruments. So measurement instruments should have some qualities. First, they should be standardized. There should be a norm. They should be reliable and they should be valid. Let us discuss them. What is a test? What we are going when we are going to measure or assess personality. There are some tests or some instruments which measure a single trait. Suppose anxiety scale. There is an anxiety scale. We are trying to measure the anxiety level of the person. So it is a single trait measure. There are also some instruments which measure several traits or several dimensions of personalities. Suppose our 16 personality factor. It is a multi-trait measurement. We are measuring the personality along 16 different traits, source traits, in fact. But when we are going to suppose measure the personality anxiety of the person, what we are doing, we are asking some questions which we think the behavior, asking about the behavior of the individual, which we think it is relevant to anxiety. Okay, anxious behavior. The behavior is relevant to anxious behavior. So we are asking a sample of behavior. Sample of behavior. Then we are trying to score the responses. Okay. But in order to compare the scores of different people, in order to measure the individual differences, suppose I give an anxiety scale to all of you. All of you different from each other in terms of your anxiety level. Okay. if I am interested to compare you or to interpret you, you are high on anxiety or you are low on anxiety, what should we do? We should adopt a uniform procedure of administration to all of you. So I should ask the same question to all of you. I should use the same wording when I am testing all of you. I should give same time to all of you. If ever I am giving time limit, all of you should be tested in similar conditions. Otherwise, testing conditions may change your response, may change your performance. Suppose some of you are sitting in a AC room and the room is very comfortable. You may be honestly giving your answers honestly. On the other hand, if you are sitting in a room which is very hot and humid, the climate is very hot and humid, and you are sweating a lot, you are feeling irritated, then you may not give your honest answer. You may be thinking of, let me finish this test and go out of this room. Okay, so if this happens, I cannot compare the scores of both of you. Okay? So the procedure of administration of the test, the procedure of scoring the test, and the procedure of interpretation should be uniform for all who are taking the test. Okay? So there should be a uniform procedure of administration, scoring, and interpretation of tests. That is known as standardization of test. Okay, the test should be administered and a standardized procedure should be followed. The test constructor or the test developer who has developed the test, he usually prescribes the procedure of administration, what instructions are to be given, whether time limit is to be there or not, what should be the sitting arrangement, what should be the response pattern, all should be mentioned in the test manual. Usually, the test developer gives all information regarding all these things in the test manual. Okay, so that is how a test can be optimally useful. So in order for test scores to become comparable, the test should be administered uniformly to all the takers, test takers. The person who is being administered the test is known as test taker. Then how can we compare the scores? Okay, suppose on the anxiety scale, which I administered on you, Nikki scored 25 out of 50 questions. Okay, how can I interpret it? Nikki is having a very high level of anxiety or low level of anxiety or just an average level of anxiety.
Ma'am, we generally set norms and conditions for the scoring of the test. I guess through that only we recognize the scoring, and then only we can compare the results.
Very good. You are referring to norms. So there should be norms in order to compare the persons. Okay. If I want to actually interpret you, whether you are good at some trait or not, or to compare the course of both the you and Supriya, we want norms. Okay. Norms is because the raw scores have no meaning, usually no meaning. Norms, how can we get norms? Norms depend on the average performance or the performance of average people in the zone. How do we develop a norm? We administer the test to a large number of people and we find out the average performance. We find out usually the percentile. Very often we use the percentile. So percentile says us how many, what percentage of people in the population will score below you. So from that we know we can interpret your score. Okay, if you have a percentile rank of 90, that means 90% of people score below you, then you are above, your anxiety level is above the 90% of people in the population. That means you are having a very high anxiety level. Okay, got it? Then the test should be reliable. Reliable means the test should yield consistent results. Suppose I administer you today and I find out that you are at 50th percentile, and on you Wednesday I administer 2 days, after 2 days I administer you again and I find out that your percentile rank is 80th. You are at 80th percentile. If I am not measuring the state anxiety, there is a difference between state anxiety and trait anxiety. At a particular moment, I may be feeling anxious, but trait anxiety is more or less stable. We know that personality is stable. Personality is relatively stable. So traits are relatively stable. So if we are measuring trait anxiety, then this should not be the case. Today you are at 50th percentile and today after 2 days you are at 80th percentile. Okay, that means the test is not.
Ma'am, but
Yes.
a person varies from time to time. We change with situation and we change with time. A person who is, a person's personality 1 year before and after is quite different. So we cannot say that, it varies with time. So how can we say that?
Yes, you are right. It varies from situation to situation. But what is a trait? Trait is a relatively permanent disposition, permanent characteristic. Okay.
Yes,
So
yes, ma'am.
if we are measuring, that's why I told you, if I am measuring trait anxiety, I am not measuring state anxiety, which depends on a particular state of mind. At this particular state, your anxiety level may not be so high, but when you are going to appear an examination or appear in an interview, your anxiety level may be very high. That is a state anxiety. Okay, got
Yes,
it?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But trait anxiety is more or less permanent. Traits-
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, yes, you are saying something.
So, ma'am, how can we measure the state anxiety, sorry, trait anxiety of a person when he is
Trait
also in the state anxiety?
there are scales. So there is a scale, trait anxiety inventory. Spielberger, a psychologist, Spielberger, he has developed a scale, trait anxiety inventory. This test gives two scores, one for your state anxiety, one for your trait anxiety. Okay, so your state anxiety may
Okay.
be different if you are tested in different on the different days, but trait anxiety could not, it need not be exactly the same, but it should be within a range. The variation should be within a range. The variation should not be very high. Okay, got it?
So, ma'am, generally when we are taking the test of some people's, they are usually in anxiety. I mean, I can give you the example of our practicals, like we are going to some children
Yes.
to survey them or to say, give them some questionnaires. They are already anxious about that. So how can we conduct the test, whether that may be anxiety test or something else?
Yes, you are right. Suppose you are going to test the mathematical ability, arithmetic ability of a child. Okay. So you are going to the school and telling the children that, telling the students that, students, I am going to test you and know your arithmetic ability. Okay. Yes, you are right. The children must be experiencing some amount of anxiety. Okay, but so the score which you got is a mixture of the child's arithmetic ability and the child's anxiety. Okay,
Okay,
are
ma'am.
you saying okay? So there is always a concept of true score and error score. Suppose we are measuring a trait, there is always some error, and the errors may vary. True score, we do not know actually the true score. The whatever we get, the observed score is true score plus the error score. Okay, so we cannot completely eliminate the error score. We cannot completely eliminate the errors. There will be some errors, but test administrators, they take steps to minimize the error. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Mm. The errors can also be minimized by standardizing the test. If we administer an uniform procedure for all the subjects, all the test takers, we assume that the anxiety level is same, more or less same for all. Okay. Of course, there are some personality differences. Some people are more anxious than others. Some people take the test more seriously than others. So we cannot eliminate the errors completely. Okay. So there will be some amount of error,
Okay,
which
ma'am. Thank you.
due to which we will not get exactly the same score on two different occasions. The scores will differ, but it will be within a limit. Um, this difference we say standard error of measurement. When we are measuring a particular ability or a particular trait, along with the trait we are measuring several other factors. So that is that those other factors, they contribute to the variation in the score. So that is known as standard error of measurement. Standard error of measurement is also a measurement of reliability of the test. There are reliability means consistency, whether the test results are consistent or not. When the same test is administered on different occasions, or the two identical forms of the test are used to the same individual, or the test is administered by two different people, two different examiners are there, the test scores should not vary much. Okay, that is reliability. So the test should be reliable. There are several methods of finding out the reliability, which I think you will study in different papers. Test, retest reliability, split half reliability, parallel form reliability, interscorer reliability, and as I told, subject standard error of measurement is also, if the standard error of measurement is less, the test is more reliable. Okay. Then the test should yield consistent result. There is no doubt about it. Again, another concept is validity. The test should measure what it intends to measure, what the test should measure. So the test should be valid. There are also different types of validity: content validity, criterion related validity, construct validity, etc. And there are different types of measurement instruments. A very popular method of measurement is personality inventories. Personality inventories or questionnaires, they consist of several items, and the person who is being measured, or the test taker, is asked to indicate whether the statement is appropriate for him or not. Okay, or the extent to which the statement fits him, the statement describes him. These are personality inventories. Personality inventories are very easy to use, very easy to administer, very easy to score and interpret. Usually they are standardized, and they are having very high reliability and validity. But the difficulty with the personality inventories is that personality inventories depend on the self-report of the people. So we assume that whatever the person is reporting is true, but the person may be faking. There is possibility that the person is not saying the truth. Suppose the person may be reporting himself in a socially desirable manner. So there is social desirability effect. We all want to look good, to present a good picture of ourselves. So there is a social desirability effect. And another difficulty with the questionnaires is that the problem of acquiescence. Acquiescence means people have a tendency, some people are yes sayers. They have a tendency to respond in a particular manner. Some people are yes sayers. Whatever you ask to them, they will say yes. They will answer yes. On the other hand, some people are also naysayers. They will respond with a no. So in that case, we may not get a true picture of their personality, true measure of their personality. So to take care of this acquiescence measure, some items are negatively worded. Okay. Another method of personality measurement is projective techniques. In projective methods, what is done? Some ambiguous stimulus is presented and no definite answer is there. People give different responses. Why it is believed that since the stimulus is ambiguous, its meaning for different individuals is different. So people will respond to them according to their own interpretation. So according to their own inner understanding, inner personality, inner qualities. Why they are called projective techniques? It is as if the test taker is projecting his or her inner qualities onto the stimulus which is presented. Okay, which is ambiguous. So in projective tests, since we do not have definite right or wrong response and we do not know by giving what response we would look more desirable socially, we give our honest answer. It is likely that we will give our honest answer and social desirability effect will be minimum. But what is the problem with projective techniques is that they are very difficult to interpret. So a great deal of expertise is required to administer and interpret the projective tests. It is difficult, and the reliability and validity level of projective techniques, projective tests are usually less. Okay. Another technique is that observation technique. We can observe the behavior of people and
Although the reliability and validity of projective techniques are very less, but it's being used widely. I mean,
yes.
So,
Yes.
how can we say that like it's not reliable, but it's being used very widely?
Yes, actually, among the personality tests, the Rorschach-Inkler test, which is a projective test, is widely used, very widely used.
Yes, ma'am. In
All of,
clinical conditions, it's very widely used. And at the same time, this thematic apperception test, that is also very widely used. So, ma'am, how can we say, if it is widely used, how can we say that it is not reliable?
the reliability is low. Reliability is low.
Okay.
The test is
But
not
ET has 0.48% reliability.
as, yes, yes, you are saying something.
9%.
Yes, you are saying something. Are you saying something? Okay, reliability is not as high as the standardized tests, questionnaires like 16 PF or your NEO PIR. They
Ma'am,
are highly reliable.
ma'am, but in those things, it's like we cannot say that the subject is, I mean, the introspective report. I mean, we cannot completely rely on the subject's opinion that he or she is saying the truth in case of personality questionnaires, but still they have a very high reliability.
Yes.
Whereas in this projective techniques, we can rely that yes, I mean it reveals about the unconscious motives of the subject, but still we why should we say that it's not reliable or it has a low reliability?
It depends on your unconscious motives. So your interpretation depends on your inner states. Interpretation of the stimulus depends on your inner states. So you respond to the picture. Suppose I am administering Rorschach test to you on two different occasions. Okay, you respond to the same picture differently since the pictures are ambiguous. It is not having any meaning, actual meaning. You are interpreting it according to your internal state. Okay,
Okay.
so your internal states are different in different occasions.
Yes.
That's why the error, standard error of measurement is high.
Mm.
Okay, it
Yes, ma'am.
measures your inner conflict, inner motives, no doubt about it. At the same time, standard error of measurement is also high because inner states are different in on different occasions. Okay,
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
why the reliability is less in comparison to the questionnaires. The questionnaires you can fake, but you know directly, you can understand the meaning of the questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So you answer in a definite manner.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So the reliability is less. Another method of measurement is observing the behavior of the person. Okay, by observing the behavior of a person, we can know about his nature or his personality. There are some situational tests. Situational tests are we expose the person to a situation which is very close to a real life situation, and we try to study or measure his behavior. Suppose we want to study or measure, we want to measure honesty of a honesty is a personality trait, honesty level of a person. We are exposing the person to a situation where there is scope to be dishonest, and we observe whether the person is behaving in a honest manner or not. We can measure it. So these are situational tests, and we can also directly observe the behavior. But with observation method, or observation method, there is the chance of the observer being biased. The observer may not observe the subject, observe the person objectively. He may add his own interpretation to the subject's behavior. So there is the chance of observer's bias, and observation method may not all. So observation is very time taking. It is a very time taking process. Suppose I am going to observe a particular behavior, crowd behavior of a person. So I have to wait until a crowd is there, a person is in a crowd, and I want to observe him. Certain behavior may not be occurring frequently, so I have to wait for the behavior to occur. So it is a time taking process. And situational tests, they are also very expensive because we have to arrange the situation according to our choice. So it is very expensive. Okay. Another easy method is there, interview method. Interview method is we are directly asking the person, usually in a face-to-face situation, or it may be telephonic. Nowadays, telephonic interviews are conducted. So we are directly asking for verbal response, oral response of the subject. Interview is easy, but interview, the subject may not also give actual truthful answer, may not behave in a truthful way, he may be lying. And interview, particularly in a face-to-face interview, there is a difficulty which is known as halo effect. H-A-L-O, halo effect. Halo, you know what is halo? It is the halo is when we see the pictures of gods, there is a lighted area behind them, their head. That is called halo. So we form first impression. Our first impression may influence our interpretations. Okay, so since we can see the person interviewee, particularly in face-to-face interview, we very quickly we develop our impressions, and our impressions influence our interpretations. Okay, so these are some of the methods of personality measurements, and there are examples of good inventories and good personal projective tests, etc. Okay, I think we should stop now. Do you have any doubt? Do you have any doubt? Okay. Do you have any doubt?
Oh, probably nobody is having doubt. Hello, madam.
Okay. Yes.
Probably nobody is having doubt, madam.
Okay. Then.
So, madam, thankful to you for giving series of lecture in a scheduled time and 2 hour duration and discussions. Let us thanks for your report and in this scenario. Actually, madam, ଆପଣ ବହୁତ patience ଅଛି ମୁଁ ଦେଖିଲି ଯେ 2 ଘଣ୍ଟା ଏବଂ proper time and you are in proper punctuality and within time also you are ready to deliver the lecture. That's a great for all of us. Thank you, madam.
ଡେରିରେ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଇଥିଲା ତେଣୁ ଟିକେ ଟାଇମ ଏକ୍ସିଡ କରିଗଲା ସାର୍।
ହଁ ହଁ ତଥାପି କିଛି ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ନାହିଁ, ଇଟ୍ସ ଏ नो ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ। ଯେ ପିଲାମାନେ ଡିସ୍କସନ ହେଲେ ଦେ ୱିଲ୍ ଗେଟ୍ ସମଥିଙ୍ଗ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ ଦ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ଫର ଅସ୍।
କାହିଁକି
ଆଉ
ନା
madam,
ଯେହେତୁ ବି ଶେଷ ଦିନ ମୁଁ ଚାହିଁଲି ବରଂ ସାରି ଦବା ବୋଲି।
ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆପଣଙ୍କର ତ ଆ ପରେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଅଛି, ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ମୌସୁମୀ ମ୍ୟାଡାମଙ୍କର ନେକ୍ସଟ ଅଛି
ହଁ
ନେକ୍ସଟ 4 ଦିନ, ତାପରେ ଆପଣଙ୍କର ଅଛି। ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ତ ସିଡ୍ୟୁଲ ଟା ମୁଁ ମ୍ୟାଡାମ ପଠେଇଥିଲି।
ହଁ ସାର୍ ସିଡ୍ୟୁଲ ଟା ପଠେଇଥିଲେ,
ଆଁ,
କିନ୍ତୁ ଗୋଟେ ଡିଫିକଲ୍ଟି ହଉଛି ଆପଣଙ୍କର ଟାଇମ ଟା ଯୋଉ 10ଟା ରୁ 12ଟା ହଉଛି।
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆମର ଆପଣଙ୍କର ବି ପାଇ ଯାଇଥିବେ ଅର୍ଡର 17 ତାରିଖ ପରଠୁ ଆମକୁ ଯିବାକୁ ପଡିବ।
ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆଜ୍ଞା ହଁ
ତେଣୁ
ଆପଣଙ୍କର ଟାଇମ ଟା କେବେ କହିଲେ ସେଇ ଟାଇମ ଅନୁସାରେ ମୁଁ କରିଦେବି।
ଏଇ ସମୟ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ତ ଆଉ ଏଇ ଟାଇମ ଟା ସୁବିଧା ଥିଲା 10ଟା ରୁ 12ଟା।
ଆଜ୍ଞା
କିନ୍ତୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ କଲେଜ ଗଲା ପରେ କେତେବେଳକୁ ଫେରିବା କେତେବେଳକୁ ଆସିବା ଏଇଗୁଡାକ ପୁଣି ରହିଯାଉଛି।
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ତେଣୁ କଣ ହବ ମୁଁ
ଆପଣ ଯୋଉ
କହିପାରୁନି।
ଟାଇମ ଫ୍ରି ଟାଇମ ଯେବେ କହିବେ ଆମେ ସେଇ ହିସାବରେ ମ୍ୟାଡାମ ପିଲାମାନଙ୍କୁ ଇନଫର୍ମ କରିଦବୁ, ସେ ଆକର୍ଡିଂଲି ୟୋର କନଭେନସନ ଆଣ୍ଡ ୱିଲ୍ ଫିକ୍ସ ଦ ଟାଇମ।
ଓକେ କ୍ୟାନ୍ ୟୁ ମାନେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ପାଇଁ ଡେଟ୍ ସିଫ୍ଟ କରିପାରିବା, ଦେଖିବା କଣ
ହଁ
ହଉଛି
ହଁ
କଲେଜ ଖୋଲିଲା ପରେ।
ଆଜ୍ଞା 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 ଏନି
କାହିଁକିନା
ମୋମେଣ୍ଟ वी
ଆପଣ
cannot
ବି
do before one day।
କରୁଥିବେ, ଯିବାକୁ ପଡିବ ଏଣିକି, ତାପରେ ଗଲା
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ପରେ କଣ ହଉଛି ସେଇଟା ଜଣା
actually
ପଡିବ।
actually this order the secretary has given the order because I think this will shift. What we will do, go to the university,
ସେଇଆ କଣ
what
କରିବା,
in our job,
ଯାହା ସେଠି କରିବା ଏଠି ମଧ୍ୟ କରିପାରିବା।
ଏଠି ମଧ୍ୟ
ଆପଣ
ସେୟା
ମାନଙ୍କର
କରିବା। I do not know why in this situation they are allowing to go to the department, and they will some people will transaction from different area, so it will be corona is very difficult situation, peak situation now. Now it will be after 2 months, you can say today I have got the news that 374 people have died in India today,
yes
and
yes
10,000 people are affected in one day.
ସାର୍ ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି ସେ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ସୋସିଆଲ ଡିଷ୍ଟାନ୍ସିଂ ଯାଇକିରି ମେଣ୍ଟେନ କରିବେ।
It is very
ସବୁ
difficult.
କଲେଜ ଗୁଡାକ ସାର୍ ରେଭେନ୍ସା କଲେଜ ନୁହନ୍ତି କି ଉତ୍କଳ ୟୁନିଭରସିଟି ନୁହନ୍ତି।
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ବହୁତ କଲେଜ ଅଛନ୍ତି ଯୋଉଠି ଗୋଟେ କମନ ରୁମ ରେ 50-60 ଲୋକ ବସୁଥିବେ,
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ବା
ମ୍ୟାଡାମ
30-40 ଲୋକ ବସୁଥିବେ ଗୋଟିଏ କମନ ରୁମ ରେ। କେମିତି ସେଠି ସୋସିଆଲ ଡିଷ୍ଟାନ୍ସିଂ ସେମାନେ ଇଏ କରିବେ?
difficult madam, difficult.
ହଁ
Social distance ସେମାନେ they will travel by the public vehicle, and they will ମାନେ attach with the some other people, they will come, so it will because you see now the situation is whatever you want to do in online you
ୟେସ୍
cannot do in the university. If students will not reach to the university, what we can do it?
ସେଇଆ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆମେ ଷ୍ଟୁଡେଣ୍ଟ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ତାଙ୍କର ଯୋଉ thesis ଫେସିସ୍ ଅନଲାଇନ ଗାଇଡ କରୁଛୁ।
Everything we have to be online.
କଥା କରୁଛୁ। ଆଉ ତାପରେ ନିଜର ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ପାଇଁ ଇଏ କରିବାକୁ ହେଲେ ଆମେ ପର୍ଟିକୁଲାରଲି ସୋସିଆଲ ସାଇନ୍ସ ଲୋକମାନେ ଆମେ ତ ଲୋକଙ୍କ ପାଖକୁ ଯାଇପାରିବୁନି, ଆମେ ଡାଟା
uh,
କେମିତି କଲେକ୍ଟ କରିବୁ?
Data collection is difficult, madam.
ସେ
I think, madam, I think in this year, I think 1 year will be academic will be held, will be back.
ପୁରା ହଁ
Uh, I think
ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ତ ପରୀକ୍ଷା
that's why they have given, and again people will complain because due to the that holiday time, people will not go to the court. Okay, otherwise
ହଁ
people will go to the court ready because court is holidays now is continuing. So
ହଁ
I think it will be shifted.
ସେଇଆ
Uh,
କଣ ହଉଛି ଦେଖାଯାଉ। ତେଣୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ କଲେଜ
madam,
କଲା ପରେ ଜଣା ପଡିବ,
again,
ତାପରେ
as per your schedule time, we will communicate the
ଷ୍ଟୁଡେଣ୍ଟସ୍
students,
ଓକେ
learners.
ହଁ
Thank you, madam. Tomorrow I will inform you, or you can inform me or message me that what is your time after 1 or 2 days.
ଆଜି
Then
ତ
we can fix the
17
time.
ପରେ ଆମେ 18 ତାରିଖ ଯିବା ନା, କାଲି ତ ଛୁଟି ଥିବ
ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆଜ୍ଞା
କଲେ ରଜ ଯୋଗୁରୁ
ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆଜ୍ଞା
ତାପରେ ଗଲା ପରେ କଣ କହୁଛନ୍ତି ଆମର ଏଚଓଡି ମାନେ କଣ କହୁଛନ୍ତି କେତେବେଳେ
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ଆସିବାକୁ କଣ କରିବାକୁ?
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି ଆମେ ଆଜି ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ବି ଯାଉଥିଲୁ ଇଏ କରିକିରି ରୋଷ୍ଟର
କରିକି
ଡ୍ୟୁଟି କରୁଛୁ।
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ସମସ୍ତେ ଯାଇକିରି ଚୁପଚାପ ଖାଲି ବସିବା ସେଠି ବି ଆବଶ୍ୟକ ନାହିଁ
ନା
କିଛି।
ପିଲା ନ ଆସିଲେ ମ୍ୟାଡାମ କୌଣସି ତ କାମ ହେଇପାରିବନି ନା।
ହଁ ସେଇଆ
Neither you can teach nor will do the research.
ହଁ
It's a difficult time.
ए
Okay,
जो
thank-
ऑर्डर तो सेक्रेटरी करिचंती काहे की करचंती कोन भाबिले माने चुपचाप बसी करी मागणा रे दरमान
मागणारे पैसा पैसा नौचनी मे बी दैट मे बी
काहे खालरे बस करे
if a person want to busy or create work, the person can do always busy.
एग्जैक्टली
Always
Say-
busy, madam. Actually, for me, I can say I am busy from morning to 9 to 11.
हां
Now we have project, we have students, we have an also viva, and something is going on. We have to create the job. We have to create ourselves, create a job to busy the and use the time in proper way. You know, they are thinking something negative. They are thinking something negative. They are taking money and they are enjoying, but that is not like that. Thank you,
Actually,
madam.
they have a very negative view of teachers.
Yeah. Thank you, madam.
Okay,
We will
welcome.
meet in after 4 days. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Wish you happy Raja.
Have a
You
very
too
good
have
day.
a good day, ma'am. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.